right, well, welcome everybody to the second episode of Awakening 37 Beyond the Scoreboard. Today, joining us, we have a pretty special guest. This guy's been a friend of mine since, oh God, we were little kids, so probably at least the last 30 years that I can remember. But one thing
Yeah.
we both have in common is we both have children that play sports, and we have different things that we have to deal with. So it's interesting to get a different parent's opinion on things, especially in a sport that we don't commonly hear about here where I'm from. So, the first thing I want to dive into is just, how the heck are you? You know,
Great.
kind of tell us a little bit about yourself real quick.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. We're a little bit older than you said there, actually. It's been more than 30 years, but yeah. Um, I'm good. Living in Illinois, and this right here, this is my son's hockey team. So yeah, we're gonna, I think, talk about some youth hockey today. And congratulations on the podcast. Um, it's great to be here.
All right. Well, one thing that I wanted to start out with is, like I said, me and you played sports together growing up for quite a long time.
Hmm.
What are some differences that you notice between your son's hockey? I mean, I know he's played other sports. I know he's played baseball, and I know he's played other sports that me and you played before. But what is it with hockey? Because I know he has a genuine love for the sport, it seems like. What is it about hockey that you can parallel to our sporting, or what's so different, and how is it similar? I mean, just kind of explain, what it's like with a child that plays a completely different sport than you grew up playing.
Yeah, I mean, so I kind of I think of it this way. When I grew up, I was playing basketball first. Kansas is a basketball crazy state. Um,
Right.
and I was playing that, and then I moved into the baseball world a couple years later, probably as a youth. And the second I got on a baseball field, I fell in love with the sport. I mean, I liked basketball. I loved baseball. Um, that's the same to this very day for myself. So Patrick, um, my son Patrick, when we started him, he was playing t-ball, and he's doing well. He liked it. He learned coordination and stuff like that. And but then we moved up a little north of Chicago where we live now. We were living in Chicago at the time, so we came up here. There's a lot of hockey all over the area, including in the city, obviously, but it's really big in the county where we live right now. Hockey and lacrosse, both just massive sports around here. And we put him, in a learn to skate program. He already knew how to ski because we've been doing that with him since he was a young kid. So skating wasn't too far of a leap for him because he already, knew how to do the hockey stop
Hmm.
in skiing. And so, it's a slow process to learn how to skate that well, but he's been doing it. And the second he got on the ice, I mean, the minute he got on the ice skating, he loved it on the ice. And he, why exactly? I mean, I don't know. The same reason I loved it on a baseball field, I guess. And so he played a season after he went through the learn to skate and the learn to play hockey programs, and played a season of travel. And he actually approached my wife uh, late in the season last year when it was time to make the decision of what to play in the spring, and he told her he was a little nervous because he wanted to continue playing hockey and he was afraid to tell me. And I was worried that I'd be upset about that. Of course, I'm not upset. I'm glad he's found something that he's passionate about, and I hope he gets everything out of it that I got out of sports too.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, especially to have that passion and that love for the game. I mean, my kids, they're kind of still, looking for their niche, I guess, whichever one they really like. I mean,
Hmm.
I had Jackson who just oddly enough decided to dive and got really good at it. And
which I think is amazing.
yeah,
That's
he was
cool.
really good at it and went to state, all 4 years. And so that was just really weird. But outside of that, my kids just really never had anything, never really had that drive for it. But
Mhm.
now here's one thing I really want to get into because, like I said, um, not to you, but like I mean, I explained it to you outside of this conversation. I kind of want to get into the mental side of the game. So when it comes to hockey, it's a lot like football is around here. You get to that age and kids start really getting big. How do you explain that to your child, or how do you because there's going to be some ups and downs when that starts happening, just naturally. I mean, maybe Patrick gets bigger quicker than other kids, or maybe he doesn't. It could go either way. But how do you explain that to kids? Any kind of like setbacks or failures? How do you explain it to children? Not what is common, but how do you do it specifically?
Right. So it's a 2-year cycle for each level in hockey, which is similar to a lot of sports, but specifically for him, he he's a squirt right now, which is the current birth years for that. It's 9 and 10 year olds is what it is. So current birth years are
Okay.
2015 and 2014. He's a 2014. So last year he was definitely one of the smallest kids on the team as a 9 year old. Um, and they're too young to check. They don't check each other, so it's not a real physical thing yet, although they definitely do run into each other at good speed. Sometimes intentionally, sometimes not. It's questionable sometimes, but it is illegal to check right now. So size isn't as big of a thing. But this is his second year now. He's one of the older kids, and he's still not a giant. You and those who know me know genetically he's not going to be a giant, but he is he is one of the better sized kids on the team now, being one of the older ones. And he's quick. And there are some pretty big collisions that happen when they run into each other. And they're on a slick surface and it's icy. And fortunately, they have a lot of pads on. So he has had questions, about the physicality of it and about, you know, kids on other teams intentionally doing this or that during the game. And, it's something I don't think we've had a lot of dangerous moments yet. At this age, they're still a little bit slower and they're trying to police that out. But it will be something that we have getting older. And some of the other families that have older kids in the program have talked about that, how hard the transition is when you do get to checking. And some kids, they basically stop playing at that point.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean it's kind of like football here. You got some kids that go through the flag football system and they don't play tackle football until they get to say middle school. And they get to middle school and they get hit once and they're like, "Nope, I didn't sign up for this. I don't like this part of the game."
yeah, I mean, as for how I specifically have addressed it, it's I tell them, I give them a little punch on the shoulder. I say, "You're tough. You're a hockey player. You'll take it. You know, you're gonna run into the boards. You're gonna fall on the ice. You're gonna run into some other players, and that's part of the sport." And he understands that,
I mean, you
and
might
he
lose some
likes it.
teeth. I mean, you never know.
Yeah, well, not
That's
yet,
that's
but
that's part of being a hockey player.
well, he is losing teeth because he's that age, but um,
That's what I was
not
wondering. If
for
he
that
if he
reason.
loses teeth, does he run around like, yeah, I don't got no teeth now?
Well, and he has braces, so it's all kind of a mess in his grill right now. Um, that's part of the fun, right?
Exactly. Now, how do you encourage your child when he struggles or when there's any kind of setback?
Mhm.
What's the biggest way you encourage him?
Um, Positive reinforcement. You let him know the good things that happened during the game, the things to take with him the next game. It can be a struggle, for sure on that front because, as parents, we're their biggest fans. I'm wearing the gear here.
Right.
Go Vipers. Um, and we're right there in it when they're going through a losing streak too, and we're a little um upset with it, not mad because they're kids. But when he stops having fun for a game, when he's after a game and he had a fairly recent game where he scored a goal and he was just beside himself after the game because um, they lost. And at one point, the competitive side of me is proud, like, yes, that's use that energy and um, you know, go be competitive next game. But at the same time, like you don't like to see your kid struggling with a moment like that because you wonder if that's really the best thing for him is to be, competitive in that way. So you just try to, he always has questions of what did I do well, what didn't I do well, and you try to answer those as honestly as you can. You want to, not be a coach, but be that non-coach that he's looking for some answers that maybe the coach, you know, says differently. And so you be honest, but you definitely try to point out all the positive things that did occur and the things that that could be done better maybe the next time that will combine with those good things and make a better outcome, I guess.
And do you feel that you learned that from growing up? Like, do you feel you were coached or supported that way?
Absolutely. I had a number of great coaches, one of which was your first guest there on the first episode, and um, I I get the sense I was always more competitive than my son is so far. That's not to say he won't get there, but I know I was like that, and I was always very hard on myself, and not just in sports either, but academically and
Mhm.
um, you know to this day at work. Things can be going wonderful, but if I don't feel I did something as well as I could have done, I'm my toughest critic. So, yeah, growing up, I wasn't the most gifted, you know, physical athlete. I feel like the success that I did have as an athlete came through more hard work and not ever wanting to be outplayed. Like someone could be better than me, but they weren't going to try harder than me. Um, and I learned a lot of that and how to, I guess, reel that in sometimes from people like your dad. And yeah, I don't have complaints about the way I was ever handled by a coach because I do feel like I got that positive reinforcement, and I'm hoping to give the same thing. I'm not a coach. I am a dad, very much so. I did help with his baseball coaching as an assistant when he was playing baseball. I never played hockey, so I'm not, about to get out there and embarrass myself on a pair of skates. But watching from the stands, and listening to the coaches, you can hear what they're trying to teach them, and you just try to be, another resource for that for my son.
Yeah, you were always the one of the hard workers, and it's funny because those kind of players are the ones that I really gravitate towards when it comes to being a fan of the game. And I, unfortunately, I didn't have to do that when I was younger for a while. And the older I got and I had to start doing it, I really had a lot of respect for it. And I sat there and looked back like, man, I wasted a lot of time not doing this when I had the talent that could have made me a lot better. Because, you know, as well as I do, there was times when I was younger, I could just go out there and piddle around and we'd have a good game and we'd win. So, I mean, and you guys, I mean, you would sit there and bust your butt the whole time, and I'm just like, eh, whatever. So it's it's tough to it's tough to sit back and have to realize how much time I wasted. But yeah, I mean, watching people like you is it was incredible. And I know you got a lot of your opportunity getting older. especially, we went to different high schools. I know in high school you got a lot of opportunity to play on like some travel teams and things like that because
Mhm.
you were such a hard worker. So I saw that from afar and was very impressed by that. Um, how do you,
Thank you.
here's one that should be very familiar with you is how do you balance between academics and athletics, especially at such a young age? Because your son's only, what, 10 years old.
He's
So,
10.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, still, I mean, academics is still kind of not on the forefront, but it's getting there. It's getting to where they're really starting to learn. Ten years old now is not 10 years old like when we were kids.
You know what? He's learning things in fourth grade right now that I'm certain you and I did not learn in fourth
Oh, yeah.
grade.
Exactly.
He's doing multiplying fractions and he's World War I history, and I mean just things that seem he's doing geometry and math, and
Oh, wow.
not just learning what the shape is, but actually like figuring out how to compute area and things like that. And um, it I don't recall exactly what my fourth grade lessons were, but I feel like he's doing things that we weren't. And they're
Right.
obviously math is very different now. They use entirely different systems than we did. So, um, but to answer the question, I guess the school's first, and we've made that clear. Like, he has homework every day. When he comes home, it might be time for practice immediately. Often it's not. There's a pretty varied schedule when it comes to when the hockey practices occur, but he absolutely is to be doing whatever schoolwork is needed to be done before he goes to practice because we know, you go to practice, you get the adrenaline going, you start hanging out with the kids, and he's a little checked out from the school day at that point. And come home and he's sweaty and, you know, he's a little bit tired some days. He won't tell you, but, he is. And, that's when you start paying less attention to things, that mentally, that you would need for school. So, um, the balance is that school comes first. Um, and if you do it right, as you and I both did, um, then you should be able to very well as you move on through schools and up through high school, um, do just fine academically and also get your athletics too. So, and that goes not just for sports, but that goes for any, extracurriculars that, any kid out there might be doing. If you pay attention in class and do the right things at the right time in the evening, you can definitely counterbalance that with the things that are of interest to you, that are fun, that are, um, that help you in other areas of life besides just common knowledge, but actually working as part of a team, um, as part of the band, things like that. You know, Extracurriculars are important. School is important. You can do both.
Yeah. Exactly. And I like how you tied that in there that you can learn stuff from the extracurriculars that will still help you in school. Um, because
Oh yeah.
I was all right in school, but I mean, I wasn't like you were. I mean, once I transferred schools, I did have a lot more success academically then. Um, but I was chasing that dream. I was doing something I loved at that point where I wasn't doing that at my previous school, so I just didn't have that drive um, for schooling. Do you ever get pushback on that?
Pushback from Patrick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, he enjoys school. We're lucky. He likes learning. He's an avid reader. He checks several books, mostly nonfiction, out of the book or out of the library each week. He reads them all immediately. He's a big history buff. It's not hard with him to encourage him to, you know, learn and do things like that because he enjoys learning.
Right.
And we're lucky in that way. I was that way growing up. Um, Academics came, you know, fairly easy to me, in a way that athletics came easier to a lot of people like yourself. And sometimes I didn't apply myself academically because it was easy for me to the point, and I feel a little bit sometimes the same way you do, that you described, that, it was sort of too easy sometimes, and
Yeah.
I probably could have done more. So I put my efforts where it was harder for me, which was, athletically, which I did okay at, but that's beside the point. Sure, Patrick pushes back. Um, he wants to sit down and play his video games, and he wants to, pop open YouTube and start watching a bunch of shorts, and you know, but he does a good job. He's a kid. You can't expect perfection.
I mean, he's probably going to want to watch podcasts and stuff like that before too long. So
Maybe a certain one,
I'm
especially.
I'm sure he will. Knowing Patrick, I'm sure he will.
Yeah.
Because I mean, people don't know this to the podcast, but I mean, I am his imaginary friend, your imaginary friend. Because for the longest time, Patrick never saw me. So I
Yeah.
was your imaginary friend. So yeah, but Patrick's a great kid. I mean, it's it's awesome how much he's grown in the last like just even couple of years. Um, like because we started doing a lot of gaming online over the pandemic, and that's when I was started being your imaginary friend. And so during that whole time and getting to know him and him talking to me, like you'd leave the room for something to go get something to drink and he'd carry on a conversation with me for 5 minutes, but it was always entertaining. So I can imagine if he gives you pushback, there's probably a whole defined like I'm gonna give you pushback and here's why. I'm sure he has it all designed out for
I
you.
mean, we had parents too, right? Like
Exactly.
sometimes you just push back because you want to push back against something. It's fine. It's all part of the parent-kid relationship, and we've all been through it.
I would say your mom gave in to us pretty easily back then. We
Yeah,
got
she
our way
kept us
quite a
in line
bit.
since she when she got upset though, she kept us in line. There was
Yeah,
always a breaking point.
we did have our moments where we didn't get to do anything and we got stuck cleaning.
Yeah.
That's funny. What advice would you give to other parents uh that are either starting their child in sports from from day one like you did, or maybe someone who's coming into the sport say this year, maybe someone's bringing their 10-year-old child into the sport this year. How would you talk to any parent in either one of those situations?
So you got to be supportive and not, I mean, there's supportive in the way of a fan, like most of us parents. We are the fans at the game, right? We're cheering them on. We're, you know, doing "Let's Go Vipers" chants, and
Hmm.
we're standing up and giving applause when things happen. And the flip side of that becomes true as a fan too. I mean, if you're a fan of any sports team, you understand that you're not always happy with what you're looking at. And you have to realize, if you haven't done it before, these are kids. Okay, those officials are kids. Those coaches are either paid nothing or very little for the time that they're dedicating to your children, and they all need to be supported. Okay, we can get upset that they didn't call that offsides, right? We can be upset that that clearly was a hook there that they let go. Um, but they're trying in the world. They're not paid handsomely. They're not professional NHL referees. These coaches have a day job, and then they go straight to coaching your kid. And and God bless them, because not all of us want to sit there and dedicate a lot of time to spending with a bunch of kids that are not your own in a group, yelling and screaming and being children, that's not for everybody. And so for those that can do it, and just like teachers at schools, like that are not paid well enough for what they do, they're raising our children, at least part of the day. And, that deserves respect. And even if you don't agree with how it's being done or the substitution patterns or, things like that, my advice, keep it relaxed, keep it chill. Understand that these kids are out there having fun, and we do spend a lot of money to put them in travel programs. I mean, you know that as well as anybody from baseball, and um, there's a lot of money out there, and sometimes if you don't think it's being, used correctly, you can have those thoughts, but be professional, be adult about it. Um, we've all seen those parents at games just going absolutely nuts, and that does no good for anybody, and it certainly doesn't do good for your child who is either embarrassed by the actions or, legitimately, you know, afraid of what comes next because they, just did something wrong on the ice and or on the baseball field or wherever, and that's not good for any kid out there.
Yeah, it's like we were watching a game, and a kid made an error, and the coach instantly took him out, and put another kid in. And the first thing I thought was, you're teaching these kids they can't make a mistake at all. And you know as well as I do, especially in baseball, you definitely learn from your mistakes. I mean, more than anything, do you learn from your mistakes in baseball? I mean, you make a mistake one time, that next time that batter comes up, you remember, hey, this guy hit it here, this caused me to do that. I mean, you're constantly learning from your mistakes. So, I mean, that's just something you have to learn, and you have to let kids kind of have those mistakes, and if you don't, then you're just teaching them that they can't ever fail, and that's just setting a child up to fail, in my
Right.
opinion.
Right. If you tell a kid not to fail, they're probably going to fail.
Yeah, they're most likely
They
gonna
they
fail.
need, you know, we all need to learn from mistakes. We can't just learn by being perfect at all times. None of us are perfect, and um, it's it's a harsh reality of life in general is that, try as you might, sometimes you won't succeed.
Yeah, I mean, you even look at all the
And
you
that's
look at all
okay.
these successful people, they probably failed at something at one time in their life. So,
Yeah. And that's okay because we all do.
oh yeah.
The big point is to understand that and try to do better next time. And um, maybe you'll fail then too, but it'll still be okay. We're all still going to be okay.
Well, I appreciate your time. That was some really good insight into uh, coaching, especially like I said, hockey, because around here we don't. I mean, I know of one kid ever around here that played hockey in Wichita, that I know of, and he was an older kid, so I don't even know a kid that's in 10 years old playing. We may have one travel team around here that might travel to like Kansas City or Oklahoma, but yeah, we don't have much more than that.
You know, growing up, I mean, we played hockey video games. We watched Sports Center and loved hockey highlights. I always thought my size, I grew up skiing, obviously big skier in Kansas, right? Uh, Colorado not too far away, and I was fortunate to have parents who, loved going skiing, and so I grew up skiing early and often, and so I liked the cold weather sport there, and I always thought, maybe if I had had hockey around, I that might have been my jam, more so than basketball in the winter. But I never had that opportunity. So I love that Patrick does have that opportunity where we live now, and he's got the choices, and he made, at least for now, this choice. He clearly loves it out there, even when he has a bad day. And that's what we should all aspire to for our children is find a passion. This might not be the passion 5 years from now. We don't know. but for right now, he loves it. And, maybe he finds something else, musical instrument, you know, maybe who knows? There's lots of options out there that are going to present themselves, and none of them are wrong. The right one is the one that he loves to do. And um, I guess that's the other piece that I would, tell parents out there. Don't push your own dreams on your kids.
Yep.
Um, let them give them the options, let them discover it. If we're lucky, they're the same dream. But if if we're really lucky, they find the right dream.
Yeah,
That's
that's like Jackson and Dive. I would have never pushed him towards it.
right.
But it was fun, and I mean it was something that as a parent I had to completely learn everything, but it was fun. I learned a lot about dive. I watched
Yeah.
dive during the Olympics this past year and was really interested in it because I knew what was going on. So,
And I know what's going on in hockey. I've watched plenty of it over the
mhm.
years. I'm, pretty pretty big, hockey NHL level
Yeah,
fan. But I'm learning a lot about how to actually play and where to position and where to, do all the things, that come naturally to me when I'm watching a baseball game, and I'm watching things that people who didn't play don't necessarily watch,
right,
positioning and, the game within the game between the pitcher and the batter and catcher's position, all these other things that some people might not watch when they
right.
watch a baseball game. Well, I'm learning those behind the scenes now with hockey, so it's exciting for me too. You know, I love it. I would love to get out there and sit in a beer league game with somebody and just see if I can do it. But
I don't say, don't they
definitely not
have
as strong
like
as
old
skater.
guy leagues?
There are, yeah. It's just I would get destroyed, but um,
Ah, you
they're
should
pretty
try
good
it.
skaters. They're pretty good skaters. I
Hey,
I can
you should
stay
you
up
should
on
try
ice.
it. I mean, I just picked up a microphone and decided to start making a podcast.
Hey,
So,
and good for you. That's amazing.
I mean,
That's really cool, and I'm
you
proud of
could
you.
try whatever you want. All right, we got about 5 more minutes here.
Yeah,
There's one thing that really has crossed my mind for the longest time, because knowing you as a kid, you've been a Cubs fan, you've been a KU fan. Uh, Currently, I believe you're still a Washington
Capitals.
hockey fan.
Yep.
I'm not sure how you feel about the Blackhawks living in Chicago now, because I thought they were big rivals.
No, the Capitals and Blackhawks aren't really rivals. Who
Okay.
is rivals is, my wife is from Michigan.
Yeah. I'll
She's
say
a
so
Red Wings
she's a
fan
Red
now.
Wings fan, right?
Yes. That
Okay.
is original six hockey there. That is Red Wings, Blackhawks. So I guess the Blackhawks, so growing up, we would have the Blackhawks on WGN. They didn't show every game, but
Right.
if you ever did see a game on TV that was not, a nationally broadcast ESPN game, it would be the Blackhawks. So, we grew up and it was like Jeremy Roenick
Hmm.
and Steve Smith and that crew, we'd play with them on the video games, and Roenick was amazing on those games. It's going into Hall of Fame. Just did, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, who
Um,
was it? The Red Wings had Fedorov?
yeah, so that was, yeah, Fedorov, that was early Fedorov time. Later in the 90s, the Red Wings absolutely took over, and they were a bona fide dynasty for a long time there. If there was a team that I would say growing up that having no team probably liked more than any other, was probably the Blackhawks at that time. But I really didn't have a team that I had a passion for at all. Moved to DC in 2008. Was there for 5 years, and one of the things that I had finally was a hockey team. So I went to a couple games, and man, that crew, which obviously you've got Alex Ovechkin still there right now, but man, they were high flying, high scoring, everything that you would want to see as a casual hockey fan, going to the arena, you know, it was fun, and it was really easy to latch onto that team. And my wife kind of gives me a little crap sometimes because I still sit there and watch Capitals games. You know, we left DC about 10 years ago, and I'm still very much a diehard. I watch as much as I can. I read all the blogs, you know, on a daily basis about, you know, who's banged up and you know, who, you know, which AHL player is might come up and help out the team here soon. And I love it. The Blackhawks, I certainly hear plenty about them. Obviously, Chicago is a big sports town in a lot of ways, and so the Blackhawks are important, but they're also quite down right now. They don't get a lot of local radio airtime right now. It's always going to be the Bears number one, and then Cubs number two, and they're really close. And after that, you know, I'm sure when the Bulls and Blackhawks are better than they have been the past few years, they get a little bit more of that time, but it's always a Bears town number one.
So are
And
you a Bears
like,
fan?
no, no, I'm a Chiefs fan.
I would say I never knew who you were football fan wise because I remember growing up you were a Dolphins fan, but
I like the
I thought that
Dolphins
was
because I
pretty
like
much
Dan
because of
Marino.
Dan Marino.
Yeah, but I didn't have any sentimental attachment beyond that. I really liked watching that guy throw the ball over the field. Um, yeah, I was never a diehard NFL fan. I love the game of football. I love watching it. I'm definitely a Chiefs fan above all else, but I'm also more, you know, a fan of my fantasy football team too. Like,
So is your wife a fan of Detroit?
yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. For years she would be embarrassed of that fact, and
So
right
that
now
wouldn't be
she's
good if it was
not
Detroit and
embarrassed of that at
Kansas City
all.
this year.
Yeah, well, we thought that they were going to play in the Super Bowl. They almost did last year, remember?
Almost did last year, yeah.
And and I told her, and I don't know how much she believed me, but you know, the Chiefs won a couple already. If it had been last year, if it had been Lions versus Chiefs, I would be rooting for the Chiefs, but I would be super happy if the Lions won. It's been like what 70 years
Yeah.
since they had, you know, their 50s dynasty, you know, long before Super Bowls were a
Yeah, I'd say
thing.
they didn't win a Super Bowl. They've
They've
never won a
never
Super Bowl.
won a Super Bowl. They've never been in a Super Bowl. And you know, my wife and her amazing family, of which, you know, I mean, that's a great family, and they're just several generations deep of Lions fandom and Lions pain. And you know, I would like to see for that franchise, for that fan base, for them to do well. Um, am I a Bears fan? I mean, no, I'm not. I root for them above most.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Awakening 37 Beyond the Scoreboard. You got some really good insight into how parents deal with their athletes. Um, haven't really gotten into as much as I would like to the mental game wise. However, when we do actually get to speak with Ben Zobrist, hopefully we can get more into it as far as from a pro athlete's point of view, especially from his upbringing into the sport. So hopefully we can dive into that. I hope you guys enjoy this next episode that I have that we have here. I hope you enjoyed it. Um, and if you have any comments, please leave them below. And we'll be sure to add them to the next episodes. Looking forward to getting somebody else on the show. As of right now, don't have anything lined up until December 5th. So if you know anybody that may be interesting and want to interview, please have them drop me a line and I'd be more than happy to get them on the show. Thanks.